Hello, free spirits. Welcome back to Flying Upstream. Today we're joined by two guests who have walked the road less traveled to create their own paths.
That is right. Today we have Karen Yates, who previously worked as a pharmaceutical research chemist in neuroscience and is inspiring professionals to stop settling for the life they've been told to live and break free from the predictable paths laid out for them. She focuses on inspiring people to build a life that actually ignites their passion. Karen, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thanks, Luisa and Kristyn. Very happy to be here, excited to share, and yeah, just have a great conversation.
Awesome. Our next guest is Bev Young. Bev has always worked in marketing in one capacity or another. After working in print production, she became interested in the internet. Bev wanted to know how it worked and discovered the answer was coding. Then she set about learning code and design with the idea of starting her own business at some point. Bev is entirely self-taught and finally felt ready to open her own business in 2014. While it was a rocky start, Bev carried on. Bev, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thank you so much, Kristyn and Luisa. Very happy to be here.
Likewise, we are so excited to have y'all, and we are going to start by playing some amazing game that we love, and it's called Two Truths and a Lie. This game has turned out to be a lot of fun, and we've had another panel session, so I'm hoping the same for today. And real quickly, we'll talk about how it works. So each of you will tell us three things about yourself. Two of them will be true, one of them will be a lie. And then the rest of us will try and guess which one is the lie. Bev, you're up first.
Okay. Three things about myself. I love motorcycles. I read tarot cards. And I never went to college.
Ooh, okay. Well, we know that you're self-taught in some ways.
Mhm.
So that could be completely self-taught, that you never went to college, or it could be that you learned how to teach yourself in college. I think the tarot cards is true.
Me too. I think so too.
I'm not sure about the motorcycle.
I mean, I'm going to go with the motorcycle as the lie. The other two could, yeah, I mean, okay, I'm just going to go with that one. I'm going to go with the motorcycles.
Okay. Well, the lie is that I never went to college.
So
did.
completely self-taught.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
I did go to college, but not to learn web design. And I do love motorcycles. I don't ride them myself. I'm an excellent passenger. I'm an excellent motorcycle passenger. And I do read tarot cards.
It's amazing. You're multi-talented. I love it.
Sure.
That's fun. So who do you ride motorcycles with, and where do you go? Do you go on long journeys?
Not too long. My husband rides. He's rode forever. And so I often go with him on rides. Actually, I haven't been doing it much recently, but yeah, we used to ride a lot. And what the best part of it is if you're riding with a whole group, a big group of bikes. And, we used to like to sort of terrorize the countryside around California and drive through these tiny little towns, a group of 10 or 12 motorcycles coming through, and it would make a big noise, and it would be so much fun. But then we'd stop and say hello to everyone and, have breakfast at the local restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That sounds amazing. That
It
sounds
was fun.
absolutely amazing.
That's great. Okay, Karen, you're up.
All right. Three things about me. One, I left the US 5.5 years ago to become a wife and mother of a full-time WTF, world traveling family. In that 5.5 years, we have visited 20 countries, and I am traveling with 2 children who are now 18 and 12.
I'm going to go with the lie is you're traveling with 2 children who are now 18 and 12.
Okay.
I think it's the number of countries that you've been to.
Mm.
So I think if you're traveling, the point is to go to as many places as you can, right?
Okay. Beth, you got a guess?
Well, the first one is quite detailed and specific, so
Mhm.
I'm thinking that's true. The 20 countries and the 2 children. I'm going to go with the children.
Okay. Well, my children are 18 and 12.
Damn.
But we actually slow travel, so we have not hit 20 countries in 5.5 years because we really focus on settling in, enjoying the culture of the different places that we live. And so we have not hit 20 yet.
Should have known. 20 sounded like a lot.
But in 5.5 years, I mean, that's really 4 countries in a year. It's not really that much, but
Yeah.
we go slower.
Yeah. It's amazing. That sounds amazing.
It does.
Thank you both so much for sharing all that.
Yeah. Okay, now that we know each other a little bit better, let's get into the heavy stuff. Karen, I'd love to start with you. So you spent 20 years working as a research and development chemist, creating new drugs in the lab for a variety of central nervous system diseases and cancers. For some, that career path could feel very rewarding, but you sold nearly everything you owned and embarked on a journey that some would call absolutely crazy. What was the moment that you decided you needed a change?
Oh, a moment, it's more like life happened. And so the career, it was rewarding. It was very rewarding to get in the lab and make new things that would go into animals. And I actually had several things transition into humans. It was very rewarding. But my personal life was really in the dumps. So my husband and I were a word away from divorce. Our finances were in the dumps, and I had no time to spend with my 2 kids that were growing. And I'm like, this is not the life that I imagined. I'm only here once, and I'm slugging along and not enjoying life, not enjoying time with my husband, not enjoying time with my kids. We have to do something different. And so it took a lot of conversation, and it took my husband testing me, like every marriage counselor will tell you never to do. But he tested me with the question of, what do you think about moving to Thailand? There was some backstory to it, so it wasn't completely random, but it was kind of out of the blue. And his question just sparked ideas within my head. And that's what really started us down the path towards the full-time travel.
That's pretty amazing. That's quite a big decision to make. And I'm glad that you made it, because sometimes it can look like everything it's supposed to look like on the outside and not feel the way that we want it to feel. So I'm glad that you were able to take, a beautiful career, appreciate it for what it had been, and then make sure that you were infusing time, love, and energy into the things that matter to you. That's beautiful. And Bev, I want to move on and ask you a question, a little bit about your background. So you mentioned you were in traditional marketing, and you journeyed on into the world of web development. Do you remember specifically what it was that created that initial interest for you to learn to code and to learn to, even have a question about how does the internet work?
Well, it was just basically seeing it there, and being exposed. And, I'd been working in a lot in print production. So I knew how to print brochures and flyers and things like that, marketing materials. Um, but there was this whole digital side of things going on. And I was just absolutely fascinated by, the development of it. I mean, it started out slow, and then all of a sudden there's pictures and videos and all these things on the web. And I was just curious. How does this work? I started looking at source code, and websites. How does that work? So I mean, yeah, I realized quickly that it's all code. So thought, okay, let's learn code. So learned markup, HTML, and CSS, and a little JavaScript, and then WordPress as well. And they didn't have, at this time, they didn't have the big platforms that they do now, Squarespace and things like that. It was just basically WordPress and plugins. So that's where I started. And yeah, I was just fascinated by how it works, and it's immediate gratification, which I like. You know, you do something in the back end of a website, and it appears on the front end. It's miraculous. So it really appealed to me that way too.
You are amazing. I majored in computer science in college, so I spent my fair share of time coding and programming, and it's no coincidence that I decided not to pursue that as a career because it's very hard. I loved it. I was passionate about it, but I used to get so frustrated trying to debug the code. It's very difficult. So hats off to you, Bev, especially learning all on your own, self-taught. Like, that's no easy feat. So you should realize that's quite an accomplishment there. Okay, so as we move on, this question is for both of you. So Karen would like to have you answer it first. Okay, so we've shared that both of you have made a transition, and what, in this transition or any other one in your life, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in transitioning from a conventional career to your more fulfilling path, and how did you overcome these obstacles?
Sure, that's a great question because there are a lot of things. And one of my passions is helping folks to actually do this. And so diving deep into my story is like, what allowed my husband and I to make this leap when other people have dreams that they just kind of put off for tomorrow or maybe or someday. And so 4 things that I really identified with. One was sparking the opportunities in your brain. So allowing your brain to really dream and imagine what you'd like your life to look like. That my husband's first question, that really did that for me. And it started things going all over the place. Like, oh my gosh, this would be amazing if we could do this, this, this. And so allowing yourself to dream. So many times we are taught not to dream once we get out of childhood. You're not supposed to do that. You're wasting time if you're dreaming. So that was one. The second, taking small steps, because we didn't make this decision and hop on a plane overnight. There were months of conversations that happened that allowed us to be really comfortable with this. And there were lots and lots of small steps that we did along the way that prepared us to break free of our habits, to break free of this traditional path. The third one I would say is evading the herd of negativity, as I call it. So the people that are around us that want to see us remain where we are, because that's very comfortable for them, well, they often influence us to not do the thing that we want to do. And so we were very mindful of that and didn't actually share our plans until we were 100% committed and we were doing it, and I don't care what you say. And then the last one that's really an important one is practice making everything positive. And when I say everything, it's not just, the little things, it's literally everything. It's all the negative things that happen to us too. There's always something positive that comes out of it. And so you have to look for it and you have to focus on that, because it's really easy to focus on the problems, the reasons why we can't do this. Oh my gosh, we don't have the money, or the kids are in public school. All of these things, it's really easy to focus on the negatives. But when you start to focus on the positives, then your brain actually shifts from being one that identifies problems to one that identifies solutions and allows you to make that shift and actually transition into something that you want.
That's so beautiful. I think that's just a great lesson for life in general too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my aunt used to say whenever she would spill something on the floor and have to clean it up, she would say, "Well, now I have the cleanest floor in the whole building."
Absolutely. It's the little things, it's the big things. There's always something in there that you can take away that's positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Bev, how about you?
How much time do we have? It's a slightly convoluted story. I always had it in my mind that I wanted to do web design, okay, ever since I realized about the code and everything. And I was learning, I knew some principles of graphics and graphic design and things like that. So I had a bit of a foundation, and I was just constantly sort of adding to that while I was working. And then, distractions happen, total life things. I was working for a company in Canada, which decided to transfer me to California, which was all very exciting and everything. But it only lasted a couple of years before they realized they had to close all their US operations down. And then they didn't have a spot for me back in Canada either, which I thought was very rude. But that's how these things go. Meanwhile, my husband was there. He was working. We were kind of ensconced. So we thought we'll stay. And then more distractions. And I will just say this: try not to invest heavily in the real estate market just prior to a housing crisis in future. For your edification, it doesn't work. More distractions. Now, it ended up being more or less okay. It wasn't great, but it could have been much worse. By the end of that, I was exhausted and thinking, when am I going to open my business? Now. So I came back to Canada, opened my business. I had a decent foundation of knowledge, I felt, to get this going, but there were kinks. There were some major kinks. The first project I took on was with a friend, and it ended up being an abject failure. And it failed, and also had a slight effect on the friendship, which was the part that bothered me. It wasn't that it was a failure, because I was just starting. But and we stayed friends, but there seemed like there was a barrier to me. So that really catalyzed me to think, okay, what was my responsibility in this? What do I need to do to fix this? And there were a few things. There were a few things. One was holes in my knowledge. I had to get those filled. Another was didn't know how to run a business. Just got started, didn't know how to charge, how to deal with clients. Third was communication issues, and I joined Toastmasters to help with that. So yeah, there was stuff that happened, but it was a blessing in disguise. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done those things, and I'm still doing them all, But I never would have got started if I hadn't failed at the beginning.
Yeah, I find that failure is kind of a catalyst to a lot of things because, well, we can sometimes choose to look at it as just that, as a failure. It sounds like for you, and I think for a lot of us that end up owning our own businesses and just making life choices that are in alignment with what we want versus what it should look like, it's like we learn from that. We take away the lessons and apply them in other parts of our life. And I think this brings me directly into the next question that I want to ask, because especially in our culture, in American culture, I find that we define success in a very materialistic way. We have this idea that, for me, in my own experience, is a visual of what success is. But I'd love to know for each one of you, what do you define as success? Because I think that's what needs to start changing in the collective, is the understanding that we each get to define that. So I'd love for you each to share that. What is success? And I'd love to start with you, Karen.
Yeah, that's a great question, Luisa. It's something I've pondered a lot, that success seems to be this programmed path. And for me, and I know a lot of people growing up, it's okay, get good grades, go to college, get good grades in college, get a good job, work, 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 get married, have kids, work some more, and then retire. And that defines success. And I was on that path, supposedly, but the success wasn't there. So it's like, I'm not happy. And so for me, defining success is really about finding inner happiness with what you're doing on a daily basis. And I had to reprogram myself because I was programming my kids the same way. You guys are going to go to college and you're going to do this and that, right? I had to erase that because I'm like, that's not right. And so now for them, I look at them and I'm like, you know what? If you're able to support yourself and you're happy with what you're doing, then I am happy as a mother and I feel that I have succeeded as a mother, because how can I expect something different from them than I'm asking of myself? So I agree, reprogramming the collective belief of what success is really a first step in really changing how rewarding life is for people, because that path wasn't working for me.
Yeah, and what about for you, Bev? What do you define as success?
For me, it's fulfillment, basically the same idea. All those boxes that Karen was talking about, I didn't check any of them, not because I didn't want to. I would have loved to have the conventional thing of get married, have kids, uh, be a housewife, for God's sakes, I would have been okay. Um, well, so I thought. So I say. Um, but as it turned out, with all the things that happen in life, and you transverse, and I believe that we have guides and angels and things like that that help us through things and guide us toward things, and that it's all there for a reason. And doing what I do now, to me it's very fulfilling, because what I do kind of marries all the things I love to do.
Mm.
Um, and in addition to that, I'm helping other people. What I really love about it the most is I get to um, showcase someone else's business in a way that they can really identify with, and that they feel. I often hear, "You got me, you get me," because and I also use intuition for that. So that gives me the most fulfillment, and being able to do it every day is awesome, and it also helps other people. And I agree, but the changing the collective, I think we're moving towards that way. The communities are becoming more important. People are seeing the value and the importance of serving serving others
Mm.
more so than ever before, although sometimes it doesn't look that way, I know. But I believe it's happening behind the scenes. So, yeah, and I think it's gonna go more that way, where the fulfillment in your heart is what, success means, rather than, so much the other stuff. Of course, you need money, but, um, you know, you don't need to necessarily go overboard. And if you're doing what you love at the same time, great. Um, but so often it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. I appreciate both of you kind of saying that, essentially mistakes are critical in all this, that in taking that leap into the unknown and following your passion, there are bound to be mistakes into all of this, and it's scary and it is unknown. And I'm curious for both of you, what role does courage and vulnerability play for you in pursuing your own passions and breaking free from societal expectations? Karen, let's start with you.
Oh, that's so critical. Societal expectations are, well, they're following that straight and narrow path. And as I mentioned in kind of my life lessons in escaping there, like you kind of have to avoid those people that are trying to keep you stuck where you are. And so having the courage to say, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is for me. This is for my family. This is what is going to make me happy. You have to have some courage to stand up to the people who are like, what? You're doing what? That's insane, right? Like we've gotten that plenty of times. And so you do have to have the courage to stand your ground and be like, no, this is really important to me and this is what I want to do. And be able to stand up to people that want to keep you where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. What about for you, Bev?
Yeah, courage and vulnerability. Well, I had neither of those things when I opened my business. I didn't want to be vulnerable, and I didn't have the courage to realize my failings. Okay, so and I always had it in my mind. I have to be perfect. I have to know everything, right? And I still don't. There's absolutely no way of knowing everything. And when I, had a couple of failures there, it was like, well, at least I had the courage to say, okay, let's look at this. And then I had to show some vulnerability to realize my responsibilities in those things and what I needed to do to fix them. And I now, fortunately, don't have that need to know everything anymore. I used to just be terrified to say, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I don't anymore, fortunately. So yeah, learning those two lessons is huge.
Yeah. And so important, I think, because it is easy if we don't have that courage and if we aren't vulnerable enough, whether it is sometimes it's just with ourselves, right? Sometimes we don't need to be vulnerable to others, if we don't feel like that's a part of ourselves that we want to share. But sort of, building that backbone of courage so that when others come and say, that's crazy, we can say, well, I'm following crazy. That is my new that is my new way that I'm going to live my life. So I love that. I love both of your answers, and this has been an amazing conversation. But as we get ready to wrap up, I would love to hear what advice each one of you would give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed or someone who's really like struggling with, oh my gosh, I understand that I can walk my own path. I understand that I get to create my own life, that I don't have to follow this path that society has laid out for me. But then they're like, but I have so many choices. What do I do? What do I choose? Where do I start? Where do I go? What do I want? Do I want to build a business? Do I want to travel the world? What advice would you give? Bev, I'd love to hear what you have to say first.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed these days, I would say. Um, I always rely on intuition. I always rely on guidance. Um, once you decide you're going to do something, or you want to do something. I mean, you have to have a desire to begin with, and try to not sort of let life get in the way of that. What is it you really desire? And you need to start with that, even if it's, not specifically a type of work or anything. Just what is the essence? Figure out what is the essence of what you desire. What would give you that fulfillment in your heart? What kind of a life, or what kind of a person would you be in that instance? And once you kind of decide on that, and it's an intuitive thing, I think, people will find that the next step arrives. The next step presents itself to take once you've kind of got that in your mind, what it is that's going to work for you. And it's just following that guidance, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, that's lovely. Karen, what's your take on it?
I love your answer there, Bev. There being so many opportunities out there. I think once people get past that stage where they feel stuck and that there's nothing to do, it's like, okay, what is next, right? And Bev, you're talking, all these ideas are out there. And I think for me, it's getting comfortable with your own self, with being inside your own head. Because if you're able to listen to your inner self, you know the answer. But so often we get stuck in our daily routine and we don't stop to listen to what our brains are telling us. And reality is habits are genetically programmed into our brains to conserve energy. So it's easy to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing. It's easier to do that than to change. And change can be very difficult. And so one of the things that, if it's okay, I offer is just a free weekly newsletter that says, hey, you know what? Have you taken the time to pause for a minute, to think about this? Have you tried doing anything that will get you out of your rut? So folks are listening, they can go to inspiremydreams.com, all one word, Inspire My Dreams. And it's just a simple enter your email. You get a little weekly reminder that says, you know what, there is an opportunity to do something different with your life. It doesn't happen by doing the same thing over and over. So these are just little kind of gentle reminders and little things you can do on a regular basis, simple things that can actually affect that change.
Those are such wise words. I'm feeling so inspired by both of you right now. Thank you so much. Just amazing. Thank you both so much for sharing your inspiring journeys with us today and for having the courage to walk your own unique paths and share that world with us.
And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and Instagram for more inspiring stories and valuable insights.
And to all our free spirits out there, thank you for joining us today on another episode of the Flying Upstream show. Remember, keep questioning, keep challenging, and as always, keep